Okay, take a look at this problem on the board. Today we were talking about the connection between transformations and congruent figures. And we said that if two figures are congruent, there must be a series of transformations that you can perform that would turn one figure into the other. So the question on the boards here says to identify a sequence of transformations that will transform figure J into figure K. All right, well, hopefully the first thing you can look at is that these two figures do not have the same orientation. So the first type of transformation we should think about would be a rotation, either clockwise or counterclockwise, probably looking at a 90-degree rotation, so that figure J and figure K have the same orientation. So let's try to rotate figure J counterclockwise. We'll do a 90-degree counterclockwise rotation. I'm not saying it's the only way you could do this. We could have also probably done this by doing a 90-degree clockwise rotation. But let's try a 90-degree counterclockwise rotation to start with. Good idea, rather than just guesstimating or having a pretty good idea where figure J would be with a 90-degree counterclockwise rotation, I'm going to label each one of these vertices. I'm going to call that A, B, C, and D. And let's write down the coordinates of each one of those points. So it looks like point A has coordinates of -2, 2. And point B has coordinates of -1, 2. Point C is at -2, 0. And point D has coordinates of -1, 0. And I said we were going to perform a 90-degree counterclockwise rotation. When we rotate a figure 90 degrees counterclockwise, our rule tells us that we change the sign of the y-coordinate and then reverse our x and y coordinates. So basically the coordinates x, y will become -y, x when we rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. So let's try that. So now A prime, when we apply our rule, we're going to change the sign of the y-coordinate and make it -2, and then we'll flip our x and our y. So A prime is going to have coordinates -2, -2. Let's do the same thing with B. And B prime, we'll change the sign of the y-coordinate, make it a -2, and then we reverse them, and it's -2, -1. Same thing with C. -2, 0. Well, of course, 0 is neither positive or negative, so we don't have to worry about changing the sign, but we do need to reverse the coordinates, so it's going to be 0, -2. And lastly, D prime. Again, 0, we don't have to worry about changing the sign, but we'll reverse the coordinates to 0, -1. All right, so now let's plot these, and we'll see where this rectangle J becomes when we rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise. So point A is at -2, -2. That would be right here. And we're going to have A prime. B prime, when x is -2, y was -1. That would be right here, and that's where we're going to have point B prime. When x is 0, y is -2. That's right here, and that's going to be C prime. And lastly, when x is 0, y is -1, right here, that is point D prime. And you notice that we're pretty close to turning rectangle J into rectangle K. But the 90-degree counterclockwise rotation didn't quite do us for us. We still now have to go, looks like we need to translate this rectangle 1 unit to the right. Okay, so if we were to slide this 1 unit right, that would do it for us. And the way we note that is our coordinates x, y. Well, when we slide that rectangle 1 unit to the right, our x coordinates are going to increase by 1. So if you notice point A, where it had an x coordinate of -2, if I slide it to the right, it's going to have an x coordinate of -1. So we're increasing each x coordinate by 1. And the way we do that, the way we note that algebraically, is to say the coordinates x, y becomes x plus 1, and of course the y coordinates stayed the same. So to transform rectangle J into rectangle K, we did a 90-degree, it's right over here, we did a 90-degree counterclockwise rotation. And that can be demonstrated algebraically by saying xy became negative yx. And then we followed out with a translation of 1 unit to the right. And that can be demonstrated algebraically by xy becomes x plus 1y. So there's an example as one possible sequence you could have used to transform rectangle J into rectangle K. Would have been with a 90-degree counterclockwise rotation and then a translation of 1 unit to the right. Now I can tell you that you could have also rotated rectangle J 90 degrees clockwise, and maybe you would be interested in trying to do that one on your own. Thanks.